Hello everyone and welcome to this event from us here at Mason Frank on the essential career and hiring trends within the Salesforce community, featuring some exclusive insight from the up and coming Mason Frank Careers and Hiring Guide, Salesforce edition. My name is Andy Mason, Director here at Mason Frank, and I appreciate you taking the time out to join us. I think we've all seen a huge increase in demand for digital transformation in the last 2 years, which has presented challenges and opportunities across the ecosystem. Organizations want to use Salesforce to help their business survive or indeed thrive, which in turn gives professionals the chance to be involved with some pretty amazing projects. However, the talent pool is small compared to the demand from employers. So how do you stand as a professional wanting to be part of the next great opportunity, and how do you stand out as an employer hoping to attract them? Well, over the next 30 minutes, we'll use data from the latest Mason Frank Careers and Hiring Guide to hopefully give you a better picture of what is needed to help you succeed. Now, just before I go any further, just to let you know that we will be recording today's session, so please don't worry too much about taking notes. Feel free to sit back and relax, and we will mail all attendees a link where you can watch the presentation backwards afterwards, as well as the report itself. So just before we get started, let's quickly run through what we'll cover off over the next 30 minutes. First, I'll give you an introduction to myself and my co-host, Chloe Gord, who will be hosting today's event with me, as well as telling you a bit more about what we do here at Mason Frank. Then we'll move on to the Careers and Hiring Guide itself and tell you about why it's such a valuable resource when it comes to the subjects we'll be talking about during this next session. We'll then take you through data from the survey itself and explain what it means to you in terms of career and hiring trends for the next year, as well as offering some key takeaways for you to consider. Finally, there'll be room to answer any questions you might have, so feel free to post them in the chat as we're going along, and myself and Chloe will be able to answer them at the end of the session. So just to get us started, let me tell you a bit about myself. First of all, my name is Andy Mason, one of the co-founders of Mason Frank. I've been involved in recruitment for over 25 years, the last 12 of which since the conception of the business, and most importantly to this presentation, has been dedicated to providing experienced Salesforce professionals into the ecosystem.
My name is Chloe Gord. I am the head of permanent recruitment here at Mason Frank. I have worked for the business for the last 8 years, most recently specialising in Salesforce recruitment. I manage a division of 35 people who recruit for permanent employees throughout the UK and Ireland.
So what about Mason Frank? Well, I'm sure if you've managed to find us here at this event, then there's a pretty good chance you already know about us. But for those who don't, here's a quick overview as to who we are and what Mason Frank does. So firstly, we're a dedicated Salesforce recruitment company. In fact, we're the largest in the world. We have 279 consultants based in 20 offices around the world, from New York to Tokyo, Berlin to Melbourne. We don't just know Salesforce, we know the local markets around the world too. We don't work with any other technology. This is all that we do day in, day out. We work solely with Salesforce projects, with Salesforce partners and Salesforce customers, helping to deliver great Salesforce professionals. We live and breathe the ecosystem, and we understand it better than any other recruiter on the planet. Since 2010, we've placed over 6,000 professionals across organizations around the world. So no matter what your background is, where you might like to work, or your circumstances, we have experience of your situation, where you've been and where you want to be, from SME, enterprise and Fortune 500 companies to ISVs and partners. We've worked with thousands of different organizations. We know the marketplace better than anyone. We also know the product because we use it ourselves. With more than 1,700 licenses, we're one of Salesforce's largest customers. We know the value of using a CRM, how to get the most from it, and why hiring the right people is key to any implementation of it being a success. We know the range of Salesforce products from Einstein to Pardot, so we believe we have a better understanding of both the platform and the ecosystem than anyone else on the planet. That means we know exactly how and where you fit in, and what you need in order to make sure you're connected with your dream role. We offer interview training and preparation to make sure you're best placed to land your next great job, can assist with relocation options, as well as offering ongoing support to make sure you're happy in your role. In fact, 85% of candidates we place remain with their employer for over 2 years. In short, we're pretty well placed to advise on the job marketplace when it comes to Salesforce. But enough about us. Let's take you through our careers and hiring guide. The Mason Frank Careers and Hiring Guide, Salesforce edition, or as it's known up until 2021, the Mason Frank Salary Survey. We actually rebranded it last year in order to reflect the expanded content within the publication, which includes careers advice from leading MVPs and experts within the Ohana, as well as more practical advice for businesses from a range of voices, including several senior figures at Salesforce themselves. That's on top of the data that the publication has previously become famous for. If you're not aware of it, we survey Salesforce professionals around the globe in what is the largest independent survey of Salesforce professionals anywhere in the world. This is the 9th year that we've surveyed people working within the Salesforce ecosystem of all levels to gauge their thoughts and feelings on the issues that affect them, the products they use, the trends on the platform, the things that motivate and demotivate them and cause them to move employers, as well as taking a normalized salary information so that we can get the most accurate picture of what people working around the world with Salesforce are earning and should be earning. In total, we analyze over 150,000 different data points to be able to present this to you. The data is also studied and validated by a team of analysts to ensure its accuracy. You can see the sort of benefits your peers are receiving, what they're doing to stand out in terms of certifications, the workloads they have, and the issues that are affecting them with Salesforce, which allows you to put yourself front and center when looking for your next dream job or how to attract someone to the dream role you're posting. It also includes a city-by-city salary breakdown as well, so you can make sure that wherever you are and whatever you do, you can make sure you or your team are being paid fairly for the work. So it's not just something we hastily put together. This is an industry-leading resource that gives an incredibly comprehensive view of those working on the front line with Salesforce, what you need to do in order to stand out as a candidate, as well as how to attract them as a business. So let's get started. I think a great place to begin is what the average person working within the ecosystem looks like in terms of experience. What we found this year is that the average person working in the Salesforce role has been working with the platform for 6 years on average, with 10 years of experience in tech. 6 years is quite an interesting figure, as it obviously means there's quite a range between people who have been working longer and much shorter than that. There's also a general trend where people cross-train into the technology than necessarily beginning their career here. So if you're an employer wondering how to try and find new talent that others are competing for, there's a lot of transferable skills from people new to Salesforce, but perhaps familiar with NetSuite or Azure, for example, that you may have overlooked due to lack of experience, but could actually be an asset if they have the right soft skill set and you have the culture and team in place that will allow them to realize their potential. And also, for those of you that are watching today who may perhaps be newer to the technology and wondering if you're going to be way behind in terms of experience, then great news. In fact, for every person listening to this, is that your career in Salesforce isn't necessarily going to depend on how long you've been working in it. It's going to come down to more things such as certifications, demonstrable ways of verifying your skill set, as well as your soft skills. In fact, let's look at what adds value to a Salesforce candidate right now. So what makes you a valuable candidate? This question was aimed at what would increase your earning potential, but I still think it's pertinent as a pointer of how to stand out as a candidate within the Salesforce job market and sort the things you need in your armory. As it stands to reason that what makes you more valuable as an existing employee is also what makes you valuable or attractive as a potential hire. So despite what we've just spoken about, I think it's understandable that experience will undoubtedly play part in this, but also exposure to large projects does as well. So if you feel you're undervalued or overworked in your current role, or even just not remunerated according to the responsibilities you have, then make sure your resume reflects the work you do. If you're essentially covering 2 or 3 other roles, make sure those skills and tasks are reflected as well, as you may have a skill set beyond your job role that can actually be incredibly appealing to a potential employer, as the same position in another sector or organization can have different responsibilities to your current role. Similarly, if you've been exposed to a really big project, detail what was involved. It all depends on what you want from your next move, but plenty of people move from an under-resourced team in a large enterprise to move into a smaller organization that will appreciate the breadth of experience you can bring to a role and compensate you for it too. It's also worth mentioning that the vertical you're working at can make a difference. Being stuck in what feels like a rut somewhere within a sector doesn't mean that you need to fall out of love with that and look elsewhere. It's actually a strength that can make you more desirable and result in a really positive outcome for you. One thing we experience regularly from candidates is that they work, say, in the financial sector and they're dissatisfied with their employer. And the first thing they say to us is, I need to get out of this industry. When actually, they've a specific type of knowledge that applies to that sector, and that's really desirable to other employees who can offer them the work they're looking for. So it might not be a case of standing out as a candidate on that front, but it's certainly something worth considering when you're looking to move on, is that actually your experience in a specific sector is really desirable beyond you just being a Salesforce professional. You can have a range of skills that will make you hugely desirable and a ready-made fit for a project rather than someone with potential. Don't ever underestimate your experience, and don't confuse your unhappiness with an employer as you being fed up with the industry itself.
So I think moving on to job satisfaction, this data is quite interesting for employers and candidates alike. For employees, it gives you a really good picture of the sorts of things your peers are happy and unhappy about. Because let's face it, fixing your pain points aren't as straightforward when every single person is feeling the same way. So, for example, training and development scores lowest in terms of satisfaction. So if that's something that's really important to you, which I'd suggest it should be, then you need to be careful when you're looking for your next opportunity. Is your employer setting aside time or even paying for your certifications? Do they have access to the resources you need to help you learn more about Salesforce? Similarly, if you're an employer looking to stand out when hiring Salesforce professionals, are you doing all of these things? You can see how a few people dissatisfied with their working hours as COVID has changed the landscape and given most professionals a much better work-life balance. So it is really about looking at the margins and where you might be able to make a difference and ultimately stand out. So perhaps more interesting still for employers is the data on why candidates are looking to move to a new role. I think it's easy to look at the top answer and see it's financially driven, and that's always going to be the case. But look at the second and third, and I think the three things sort of go together. So a lack of salary increase on its own can be a worry, but when you see that it's also tied into professionals wanting to be challenged and have a career and promotional opportunities, and of course being challenged and rewarded with promotion is often going to come with a pay increase. So I think the most important thing for any Salesforce employer is going to be around development pathways. What are you going to do to keep your team focused on their journey with you? Because if they don't know what their next step is or how to get there in their current position, then they're going to be looking elsewhere and how to achieve that. It's also interesting that despite most people being satisfied with their working hours, as we mentioned in the last slide, there are still a lot of professionals concerned about their work-life balance. So if you are not offering remote work, flexible working hours, or even don't have a handle on the hours your team are actually working, then those people will be unhappy and will move on eventually. So what I will say specifically on these last two slides around job satisfaction, looking to move roles or attract and retain talent as well is this. Obviously here at Mason Frank, we're always going to try and work with you closely to ensure you find the perfect role or candidate. But it's worth knowing the sorts of things that will make you happy rather than coming to us as a dissatisfied candidate and wanting to move on. So as a candidate, being able to say to your employer that you want these things, that maybe you want to, for example, be able to feel like you have a healthy work-life balance or less stressed, or maybe that you want to progress your career to a certain point, but feel unable to do it at the present. For an employer who's able to offer these things, then being able to offer specifics like this will help you stand out. As an employer can see the value they can add to you specifically. And for an employer, knowing what you offer and what you're selling, what you're selling for the job based on these things will also help. There's no getting away from salary being the headline story, but newspapers aren't just made up of headlines. And there's more to earning more money than simply finding an employer to pay it. So we've spoken about Salesforce professionals wanting to feel challenged and wanting to learn and become certified. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at some of the statistics we have from this year's guide, specifically around training and certifications. Firstly, let's look at why they matter. 78% of professionals hold at least one certification, with 90% believing they help them stand out in a competitive job market. And that's not just about making them more attractive to other employers, because someone with a wider skill set is more valuable to you as an employer. So investing in education for your team isn't just going to leave you with empty desks in a year or 18 months' time. It's actually going to give you a team of people that are highly motivated. But even more importantly, they'll have a wider range of skill sets to be able to be more productive and drive further innovation. That's why so many employers invest in their team certifications, with almost 3/4 of employers having paid either in full or part for them. You aren't paying for your team certifications, or perhaps don't have the budget to do so, I think this makes it quite clear that you need to get incredibly creative to try and make up for this, whether that's through trying to contribute in part or create a study program where you might create in someone's schedule if they want to undertake certifications themselves, or so they invest the money and you invest the time. There's really no getting away from the fact that for employers, not being invested in your team's development when it comes to certifications will make you stand out, but for the wrong reasons. And if you're a candidate working for an employer that isn't offering you that support and it's a sticking point, then it's definitely worth being aware that there are organisations that are willing to invest in your development as a professional. It's worth keeping in mind that gaining a certification usually comes with an expected increase in pay too. But as we've covered previously, that is to be expected when you're upskilling your team. They add more value to your organisation as a result of increasing their skill set, and so ultimately they need to be compensated for it. One thing I really do want to mention before going on to the question section is some of the resources that you or your team can use to stay up to date with Salesforce beyond certifications. Obviously, trailhead badges and certifications are going to be more value to you in terms of actual career development, but if you're looking to keep up to date with various changes and updates and want a more general overview, it's really worth checking out this list, which is in the report. Obviously, if you're an experienced professional, you're likely going to be doing this already, although hopefully there may be a few ideas on here for new places that you can go for learning resources. But if you are less experienced, I really can't stress how important self-learning is and making that sort of effort to keep up to date with the ecosystem you're going to be working in. While employers are looking closely at hard skills, so things like certifications you have, they're quantifiable. Soft skills, such as a hunger to improve and develop, wanting to learn more, self-study, they're also incredibly desirable and hard to demonstrate. I think lunchtime is a good indicator of your soft skills. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting never eat, but what I'd say is once or twice a week, what are you doing at your lunchtime? Are you checking out Salesforce Ben's blogs, or maybe playing in a sandbox environment for someone? These are the hard things to quantify in the hiring process itself. And it's about having the mindset that you're invested in the technology beyond looking in and out, And it's a sort of attitude that has a trickle-down effect into everything that you do. If you're reading up and finding out what's happening on your platform, you'll want to get your hands dirty and play with it. And you'll be trying to get as many trailhead badges as you can, or pestering your boss to support you with the certifications. That's usually followed by wanting to move to an employer who can support you in that and is happy that they can offer you the chance to build on the base that you already have. So as I say, these resources aren't necessarily about getting you straight into your next job with a big pay rise. They're about helping you get started in terms of improving yourself as a candidate. If perhaps you're sat here with 10 to 15 trailhead badges, but maybe don't need to be certified, or there's no rush. There is, and these are some of the fantastic resources to help kickstart your learning path in Salesforce. Similarly, as an employer, encouraging and facilitating your team's desire to learn will help you stand out, as well as allowing them to develop skills that will benefit both you and your organisation. However, that very firmly brings us towards the end of the presentation section of today's event. So with that in mind, in a moment, we're going to move on to the question and answer session. If there's any questions you wish to ask, please add them to the chat box and we'll move on to them in just a moment. Please feel free to ask us anything you like, whether it's something specific to the presentation or whether it's something further to either your Salesforce career or any staffing questions or challenges you'd like to know more about. However, I'd like to look at the 3 quick takeaways from today's session. I think first is that certifications matter. They're a brilliant way to put a cast iron stamp on your resume and verifies your knowledge. But even if you can't do that, there are a number of other ways that you can continue to develop. Learning development should be part of your weekly work, not just something you try and fit in outside of that. As an employer, your employees are looking to become certified to expand their Salesforce knowledge, and they expect you to contribute towards that. For candidates, you've seen the statistics on how many peers are certified and why they matter. They are essentially the most verifiable way to prove that you can do what you say you can. So be aware that if you are applying for roles without them, you're going to be in the minority when a recruiter or a hiring manager is looking through your application. Next is knowing what you can or what you want or can offer. There's no getting away here that there's been a shift in the last year or two in terms of employees being much more focused on what they want from an employer. There's no specific reason that candidates are looking to move on, even though they often cover similar themes. As a candidate, if you're feeling like it may be time to explore other opportunities, then know what it is that's pushing you away and what you want specifically from your next role or organisation. Without that, you might struggle to find fulfillment when you do move on. And for employers, make sure that you know what's great or even unique about your business when attracting talent. For example, a work hard, play hard mantra may be off-putting to certain candidates that want a healthier work-life balance, but it will also attract some people that are wired that way, or a culture that is focused on work-life balance might appeal to others. There's no right or wrong answer here, but getting it right will help you attract the right people and keep them for longer. And finally, on a similar note, albeit for the candidates, look at where you add value. Sure, for organisations, you can add value to an ambitious candidate by having clear career development pathways, but for candidates, look at what your specialisms are. Whether that's a specific vertical or type of organisation, find a passion for something within the Salesforce ecosystem and look for opportunities that mirror that. Having that inherent instinct for what a healthcare org needs for a Salesforce implementation, for example, is very difficult to learn and will make you incredibly valuable stacked up against other potential candidates. Being dissatisfied with an employer is different from being unhappy with your niche. Of course, that's not always the case, but be aware that your experience will often add value to you.
That is us finished in terms of revealing some of the data from this year's careers and hiring guide. Unfortunately, as is usually the case with these events, we simply don't have enough time to cover every piece of insight from the survey. So I'd really encourage you to head to masonfrank.com to download your copy and to digest everything that's in there, especially as we drill into a lot of quite specific detail around areas such as what attracts end user candidates to partners and vice versa as well. There's so much information in there beyond what we have covered today. However, we have plenty of time left, so does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask today? I'm happy to answer anything, whether that's to do with what we've covered today or beyond, and anything I am unable to cover, I'm happy to find out and come back to you afterwards. Please post them in the chat box as we take a look through some of the questions you've asked so far. Okay, so just going to the chat box now to answer one of the questions that has come through. Sorry, just bear with me, guys, whilst I get the relevant information. So first question we have is, I have 5 years of experience in Salesforce, and now I have recently moved to the UK and studying masters. When should I start applying for jobs? And if possible, can you share the emails of recruitment officers? I suppose in short, the really quick answer to that is immediately. You can start applying for jobs. Market is really, really buoyant at the moment, like it has been for a very long time. So plenty of opportunity out there. So I certainly wouldn't let your studying hold you back on that respect. In relation to recruiting officers to reach out to, both of our contact details are on the presentation. So feel free to email or approach either myself or Chloe directly, and we'll also be sharing the link later to everyone that's on the webinar. So yeah, just reach out to us direct. Next question we have is, the language becomes a barrier in Salesforce developer jobs in Netherlands, as I'm currently looking for opportunities there. Tough one to answer, really, without knowing what language we're talking about. I mean, typically, most of the opportunities that we have, both in the UK and Europe, are, they do have English-speaking environments, and therefore we find that it isn't a complete barrier to entry for a lot of opportunities there, I suppose, is the quick answer to that one. Chloe, do you want to pick up on some of the others that are coming through?
Yeah, I'll pick up on the next one. And the question was, are you finding that Salesforce opportunities are growing over the past year or so? Interesting question. And I would say that, yes, I think the opportunity for Salesforce, both implementation and for candidates to be able to find a position, has grown. But I also think that competition in the market has grown as well. There are more people getting into the ecosystem, more people developing their skills. So whilst I would say that, yes, there are more companies looking for Salesforce candidates and looking to grow their teams, there's a lot more competition as well for those same kind of roles. So you do need to do a bit of work to prep and make sure that you're setting yourself out from the crowd. And then let me take another one. Andy, there's one on here in regards to the contract market that I'll let you answer, but I will answer. Have you on the longevity of Salesforce as a platform, do you see any risk in building a career? Short answer to that, I would say, is no. I don't think there's definitely longevity as Salesforce as a platform. I think if you look at what Salesforce are doing as a company, they are constantly trying to develop, grow, move with the market, change very quickly, and ultimately grow the platform. And I think anyone that's looking into getting into Salesforce is going to have a long and rewarding career, as long as they're continuing to move upwards, to learn more about the market, to grow in their position. Yeah, 100% there's longevity in the market.
Cool. Chloe, you said there was a question around contract market. We've got quite a few questions
it
here.
was.
Can you see where it is?
What is the value of a certified platform developer one in the IR35 contract market currently? Also, are the contract markets upward, flat, or downward trend for rates per day? Okay, a couple of questions there. I think in relation to the trend of rates, I certainly wouldn't say they're going downwards. Where the contract market has definitely increased over the last 12 months, and we have seen an increase in rates
that has come through. I would say more recently, though, that has started to level off. And it'd be interesting to see how the impact of IR35 moving forward will change that. But I would say that, in short, the contract rates have improved over the last 12 months, but they're certainly on the sort of like level out perspective now. Certainly not seeing any increased demand. And in regards to the certification question, I think the more certs you have in general, the more powerful you are in the market. Is that put in real basic detail. Certs are very much looked at as a prerequisite nowadays for most people getting into the marketplace.
Yep, I've got one here. Is hiring going on for remote locations? I am from India and looking for a job as a Salesforce administrator. Yes, I would say within COVID, well, pre-COVID, but mainly after COVID, people are looking for candidates remotely. I would say that if you are working in a different country, that's sometimes rarer. Hiring externally, but there are definitely opportunities out there. So I would say yes. Next question. I have completed all basic Salesforce certifications. I'm into Salesforce 5 years and overall IT 20. What is the current market demanding for specializing in CPQ, Pardot? So I would say that definitely CPQ, we are seeing, my team in particular, seeing a increase in demand for those more specialized specialized skills, specialized add-ons. So definitely CPQ. If you do have skills in that, I would make sure that is known. Pardot as well, we are seeing some jobs come up. I would say probably not as it's not growing as aggressively as Pardot, but it is definitely growing. So yes, if you are specializing in any of those technologies, you are going to be ahead of the curve and able to get a job quickly.
Next question I'm coming across. I have 112 badges, about to write my certifications, but have not been able to get past the interview stage. Is this because of certification? Difficult to answer that one, to be honest, without knowing a bit more about your background and your history. Potentially, as I mentioned earlier, certifications are pretty key in the marketplace nowadays, both from a perm and a contract perspective. But enabled to answer that question properly and thoroughly, I'd probably need to know more about you and your background. So feel free to reach out and we can have a conversation about that in more detail. I've done training in Salesforce. I earned my first certification also. How should I start applying to achieve my first job? As mentioned earlier, both myself and Chloe's details are on here. Feel free to reach out to us and we can talk you through some of the opportunities that we currently have in the ecosystem and we can go from there.
Yeah, I've got another one here. Salesforce market salaries based on experience alone. What are all the factors considered as per market price? Yeah, I would say it's a combination of experience, things like certifications, the types of projects that you've potentially worked on, what kind of breadth you've had within those projects. Have you just been doing 1 to 2 tasks, or have you been doing quite a wide scope of role? Dictates what salary you will get, but typically, yes, they would say experience within a range of years. And then I think there's a second part to this. We have multiple clouds in Salesforce, like sales and service clouds. People may get experience in one cloud. Is it possible to work in other clouds without prior experience? Yes, I think there are some companies, obviously, within the partner ecosystem, where you will get multiple exposure to various different clouds. I think there's a lot of online material that you can also look at as well. So I would do some research and have a look. And it's worth, when you're speaking to companies or recruiters about potential positions, talking to them about what clouds you could potentially get visibility and work with to increase your skill set.
Okay, great. I think we've covered pretty much all the questions. If by any chance we've missed anything out, apologies. There was quite a flurry that come through at the end, which was great. But if we have missed anything out, just drop us a line and we'll get back to you, or arrange a call, or so on and so forth. But essentially, that's all from us today. Thank you so much for taking part and attending. I hope it adds value to you as you or your organisation look towards 2023 and beyond. If you have any further questions, just drop us a line. And as I mentioned earlier, we will share the link for the presentation and the recording with all of you that have attended. But that's all from us for now. Thanks ever so much, and we hope you enjoyed the webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye for now.